Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Ben, and this is the monthly wrap-up for February of 2024. So all of the books I'm going to be discussing, I have talked about more in depth in previous videos, especially the Fresh Red Kills videos. In fact, I just got done recording Fresh Red Kills videos on all of these. So this is going to be a very quick summary. I do this just as a kind of quick reminder of the things I read each month, and some people maybe prefer the Cliff Notes version rather than my more rambling Fresh Red Kills videos. So at the risk of rambling more, let us begin. Again, if you want to know more about these, you can look at those other videos. This is just going to be a very quick summary. So one of the first things I read in February was The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers. This is a collection published in 1895. The first couple of stories you can classify under horror. They deal with a play called The King in Yellow that seems to drive people insane. Now, that is not the main focus of those stories, but it is existing within the world of those stories. The two stories that I would recommend people check out are The Repairer of Reputations and The Yellow Sign. Both of those I thought were very strong, and they both take place in this sort of strange dystopian future. Now, future for this book, they take place in the 1920s, but it's a strange kind of authoritarian fascist future, which I also found really fascinating. The rest of the stories in this collection, they get kind of less interesting. They stop being horror, first of all, but also they get a little bit schmaltzy in a way. It's a lot of young Americans going to Paris falling in love with French girls. So I wouldn't really recommend this as a collection, but those two especially I would recommend, and overall the first four I think are a good read. I also read this collection, Death Poems. So this is just what it says. It is a collection of poems about death. However, it is not really all that morbid. Most of them are very contemplative. Some of them are actually a little bit humorous, but they're all fairly serious. This is edited by Russ, and most of these are from the United States and Europe, and most of them date from the 19th century and early 20th century, which is fine by me because that's the kind of poetry that I generally like. I don't really gravitate a lot towards a lot of modern poetry because sometimes it just feels like prose that's been broken up for no reason into shorter sentences. So I like this quite a bit. You can see all the different tabs here. These are all poems that really caught my attention, which it looks like a lot of tabs. There's way more poems that didn't catch my attention. But overall, if the idea of, the subject of death doesn't put you off and you like the kind of poetry that I just explained, the kind of era, I would actually recommend this. I overall like this collection quite a bit. And keeping with a little bit of morbidity, I also read Horror Film, A Critical Introduction by Murray Leeder. This is an introduction to horror cinema, but it's specifically looking through the lens really of like scholarship. So he has split the book up into various sort of themes. We get a little bit of a history of a horror film. We get sort of the philosophical or psychological justifications or investigations about the horror film. And then we also get to the horror film as like an art analysis, like looking at sound in horror film and color in horror film. He gives us sort of a brief overview of those things, but really what he's doing is giving us an avenue for further study ourselves. So he is letting us know which scholars brought up what, who we should basically investigate further if we want to learn more about that. And I like this. I thought this was pretty good. If this sounds like, in a way into horror films that interests you, I would certainly recommend it. I wouldn't say for the casual horror fan, but for people who are more interested in horror studies and horror scholarship, I think it's a really good starting place. Then for Storathon Quarter 1 in February, I first read Polybius, The Histories, in this Oxford World Classics edition. Polybius, he was in the 2nd century BCE. He was Greek, but he was writing Roman history. And in this one, he writes, in part, he's writing about a lot of things. He's basically writing a universal history. Universal as far as he is concerned, what he knew of the world. And he writes a lot about Greek history, but also Roman history. And a lot of this is really about letting Greek readers know what the Roman Empire was and also the very positive qualities of it. Although he's not uncritical of Rome. Now, the first book deals with, there's 5 surviving books. Most of Polybius's works have disappeared. The first 5 are intact, and those are in here. And we also have the parts that exist of books 6 and 12. Book 1 was the First Punic War. Book 2 was looking at things like Spain, Rome against the Celts, a little bit of Greece. Book 3 was the Second Punic War, at least part of it. Hannibal Barca crossing the Alps, defeating the Romans over and over again until the Battle of Cannae. And then the next 2 books deal a lot with the Greek Social War and places like Egypt. Book 6 dealt with, at least what it remains of it, dealt with the Roman Constitution and the Roman military. And then book 12 was a sort of critical takedown of another historian. So we learn a lot about Polybius's own ideas about what history should be. And I really did like this. I would love it if there was a landmark edition of something like this, so that, and this is nothing against Oxford or Robin Waterfield, I just miss those maps that I got from the other ancient historians that I had read in the last few years. But overall, I like Polybius quite a bit. I enjoyed it. And finally, the other book that I read for quarter 1 of Historathon is The Fires of Vesuvius, Pompeii, Lost and Found by Mary Beard. This, I thought, was just excellent. This is a lot of social history. She is looking at Pompeii as it existed in the year 79 when Vesuvius erupted. She is looking at Pompeii as a tourist attraction today, the times in between, and trying to get the various layers and looking at the social life and trying to get at the heart of what Pompeii was like. Pompeii is not a city that is trapped in amber. It had already been hit by an earthquake a decade before Vesuvius erupted. So they were rebuilding it there. There were probably tremors leading up to the eruption of Vesuvius. A lot of people had, fled the city. And afterwards, even there were looters. There were people breaking into things, trying to get riches. So, and then even then, we have people who, were digging, archaeologists in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and not always using the best methods. So there's a lot to unpack here. So a lot of what Mary Beard is actually doing, she's trying to give us a glimpse into what all of that is like. She's also trying to correct some of the things that people might learn about on tours, where your guides will say things with a certain, strong certainty, and she is saying, no, we don't know that at all, actually. And it's just really interesting. It's a window into not just an ancient world, but the way that historians try to figure out what is real and what isn't. And I just really absolutely love this. It's just right up my alley. I love social history, and this is really good social history, for me at least, into the Roman Empire. So I liked it quite a bit. And those are the books that I read in February of 2024. So not necessarily holding these up in order, but we've got The Fires of Vesuvius, The King in Yellow, Death Poems, horror film, A Critical Introduction, and finally Polybius, The Histories. If you've read any of these, love to hear your thoughts. And as always, thank you, BookTube.